follow them, find who they talked to, where they stay last night, find them, pursue them to the ends of the earth, and run them down and do away with them one way or the other, because they are a national security threat. A free society is going to have these attacks.
True.
The problem is that in the past they weren't with the weaponry that they've got now, and the the we can't treat one terrorist threat one way and the other one sort of, oh, I guess we have to put up with that.
We can't do anything. It's that we're not trying.
Yeah.
He brought up that people bring up, oh, well, this many people die in car accidents. This many people die every year in medical accidents. It's like, well, the difference is we try to mitigate the circumstances. We license people and make them have safety inspections on their
Speed limits.
Right. If one doctor killed 400 patients at once, you damn sure we'd do something about it.
Very much.
That whole statistic is bogus.
Doctor can't, like you said, kill a couple hundred people and then go, what are we going to do? It's a mistake.
Yeah.
You going to outlaw doctors?
It kind of, what Lee was saying in regard to, stepping forward or stepping up is from a position of privilege, kind of dovetails into what you were saying, last week, Laura, about, basically, someone outside of the LGBTQ community, standing up, means more to you than, somebody basically preaching to the choir.
Right. Because if I were to stand up for LGBTQ rights, which I do, I have something to gain from it. So naturally, I'm going to stand up for it. If Lee or Johnny or you were to stand up for it, it means more because you guys technically don't stand to gain anything. But, equality for us all is all of us gaining something.
Right. In that community. But when it comes to gun violence, it affects us all. Like, anybody can be shot in a theater. Anybody can be shot at Walmart. Anybody can be shot at insert location here. And not just you, but your children. Like, you have, that's why John is upset right now, or, and concerned right now. It's like, we have our children were sitting off to school, off to colleges, Virginia Tech, like, we have all of these examples of our communities at large being targeted indiscriminately by gun violence, and yet we have allowed corporations, specifically the gun lobbying corporation, to dominate so much of our political a sphere of influence that we can't even have the discussion. It was crazy initially whenever in the talking points would come out and people would say first we can't talk about it right now because it's too soon, it's disrespectful to the people who are suffering. But then it's like back to back to back to back, like okay, well, if we can't talk about this recent shooting, can we talk about the one that happened like last week or the one before that,
the one right before it? Well, I think that the El Paso shooting and the Dayton, Ohio shooting, I think, is apples to oranges, because one of them had a clear motive, and then the other one was just indiscriminate shooting at a crowd of people. And you've got the far right and Republicans who want to just ignore the context of the El Paso shooting in an attempt to absolve the president of his hateful rhetoric. Exactly. When really things that he is saying, like you said, are fanning the flames or fueling the fire. He constantly uses the words infestation, and how does any of us treat infestation when it comes to bugs, vermin, anything? You exterminate them, and that's the terminology that we see in response to this word infestation, is people wanting to exterminate the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone had posted something about the possibility of these mass shootings being used, the motive of the shooters being to cause, gun reform. And I had to, I may be wrong, but if I remember correctly, one of the California shooters, I believe it was the synagogue, possibly, was uncovered that he wanted his shooting to provoke extreme gun measures, gun control, which would then in turn spark a new civil war. So I mean, these guys are, they see themselves as martyrs for their cause. But
let's hurry them along then, shall we?
I had to specify which California mass shooter recently in the past several years that I was talking about. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, it's extremely repulsive. I mean, like, there's so many more ways you can make that. You can send that symbol, but apparently, you have to take tragedy to the extreme if you're going to, get a point across. And I could see if it was effective in getting said point across, but it based off of what we've seen in regard to how our society reacts to it, all you're doing, if you're using that as a method to martyr yourself, is basically contributing to the din of violence that has become normalized in our culture. I mean, somebody does a school shooting now or a mass shooting now, it's like, okay, all right, what's the body count or whatever, and then, back to, whatever the HBO special is, or Kim Kardashian's, ass or whatever, and then we're back to, forgetting about it until it happens again. And then it's like, oh, we can't do anything about it. And so you just become part of this dance of, insanity, as opposed to like sending a message. You just become, mass shooter number, 74567, 2 or whatever. I don't see how that's an effective message. It's just basically narcissistically suicidal. That's all I can say. It's repugnant, right, but it's not effective.
Well, it doesn't help too when we have these shootings that there are people that want to blame it on everything else but the lack of gun control. I mean, I've heard like decline of civilized society. I've heard lack of prayer, video games, mentally ill, everything else other than what is clearly has been the issue time and time again.
Yeah. And I agree. I concur. I mean, we talk about this, as a problem, but it's also, it's multifaceted. Like, I think that what you were talking about is, that the false equivalency, the mutual exclusivity of these states of being, that somehow, if we address mental health care, or if we address, just removing all guns is going to solve the problem. I mean, that's the other thing too. I don't agree removing all guns is going to solve the problem, but it'll definitely cut that shit back. Like, I hardly believe that we would have car accidents, if there were no cars on the road. You're not going to have, we keep people from having nuclear weapons, and lo and behold, nukes aren't going off, all over the planet. So, we as a society have a history of regulating things that we find excessively dangerous, and we're just choosing not to do that in regard to a category of weapons that could easily be, regulated. And I'm not one to say how much firepower you need for, engagement A, B, or C, but, we can agree that I definitely don't need that kind of shit to go hunting deer unless the deer are shooting back. I just don't think that's possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how are you guys looking like? On time. We can, we cut this episode a little bit shorter, or you guys feel comfortable going? Or now I don't want you to feel awkward about breaking out, but if you want to,
I'm going to need to go in about 5 minutes. But this is great. I'm enjoying the conversation.
Cool. Well, I'll let you. I mean, I'll let you have the last word, John, and you can exit. And then if the rest of us want to keep it going for a little bit, but I want to take advantage of you while you're here. So what are some additional thoughts that you may have on the issues? I mean, specifically in regard to how we should address this, as a society, considering that we're at this stalemate now, where nothing seems to be getting done.
Well, a big part of that is the leadership in the United States Senate, who, he just stops everything. We did in the past ban assault weapons and assault
Moscow
rifles.
Mitch, you talk about Moscow Mitch, right?
Yeah, Moscow Mitch. Okay. Yep. And I understand. I know enough about guns to know that an assault rifle is regular semi-automatic rifle with some scary looking attachments to it. I understand that, but we did do that, and it did. The numbers of killings did drop during the time that those were not legal.
True.
I don't know even if we passed something barring the sale of them, I don't know how we would ever catch up to the numbers that have been sold in the last 20 years since that ban was allowed to lapse, or 15 years. But when you look at every society on Earth that's not in an active civil war, you look at all the comparisons. Everybody's got mentally ill. Everybody has video games. Everybody has poverty. Everybody has other crimes. Everybody has people who feel left out by society. Only we have killings at this scale. New Zealand had one, and what they do, they immediately seize the weapons that were involved in the killing.
True.
And it took them about 6 weeks to do it. I'm not saying we would do that or could do that, but there needs to be, for security purposes, so that I don't feel as vulnerable sending my son off to college. There needs to be something put in the way. If you have to be licensed and insured to drive a car, you should have to be licensed and insured to own a weapon like that.
Facts, that would be a good deterrent.
I think that if a weapon is used in a crime, the person who owns the weapon is liable for all damages caused by that weapon, unless he has reported it stolen to the police before the incident happens.
That's smart.
But all those things, the NRA prevents that type of common sense approach. Even if you're not going to eliminate weapons, putting some sort of common sense, reasonable controls on things is seen as a first step in a slippery slope, when really all they're doing is making hundreds of millions of dollars off of scaring the hell out of people. And that is what I had to say.
Gotcha.
I think we already have the answer. Going back to the federal building in Oklahoma, I guarantee you right now, if any of us go to a Tractor Supply or Farm Supply and buy mass quantities of ammonium nitrate and go rent a box truck, before the day's over, an FBI agent is going to be at our door with probably local SWAT support.
But if you'll remember, when they decided to put taggants in the fertilizer so that they could analyze where the fertilizer was bought if it was used in an explosion, guess who opposed that? The NRA.
Yep.
Wow.
So tell me why they're looking out for us.
I think what could go a long way in appeasing both sides, honestly, is a federal firearm license. You apply for a license, you get a background check federally, mental health screening, and it's a license that, like your driver's license, has to be renewed. But if you have a license, you can buy a gun. You can buy a gun from a private buyer, show them your license, it's valid, buy a gun from a gun show. It would close all of these loopholes, possible security threats of people who don't need to be buying guns outside of regular channels.
Yeah, and it would work also if ATF could track gun sales and guns on something other than note cards. They're not even allowed by law to use computers to do that because we're so scared of this one organization.
And the other issue I think is I think it really should be addressed as a public health issue.
Absolutely.
I really think that we should definitely start looking at studying it. That's something else. That's something that the NRA has been opposed to, is just even studying the causes, the effects, the repercussions of these tragedies. And I think if we could do that, then we could start talking about mental health. And right now, it just feels like mental health is just some pearl clutching bullshit. In all honesty, it's an excuse that individuals are using to basically it's to project this boogeyman status. There's no way you can detect who's crazy. There's no way to tell who's lost it. So we can blame it on mental health, but at the same time, that gives us permission to do nothing about it because the
boogeyman and most people with mental illness aren't going to shoot up a 7-Eleven either.
Exactly.
Laura, sorry.
No, I was just agreeing with you.
Okay.
Like always.
Hey guys, I've enjoyed it. I'm going to have to sign off. Thank you very much.
All right, John. Thanks for your time, man.
See you around.
So yeah, if we can stop looking at it as oh, it's just mental health, or oh, it's just it's just race, and just basically apply these common sense, or forward these common sense narratives that transcend mental health, because I think it would probably be hard for you to get a federal gun license if it was demonstrated that you had. I would think we would make it more difficult. To get a license if it was demonstrated that you had a history of mental health issues or domestic violence issues. I mean, already a lot of states are doing that, where if you have domestic violence issues, you can't own a handgun, you can't own any firearm whatsoever.
That you're referring to is the Lautenberg Amendment. And
Gotcha.
that's something they drill into you in the military, because if you get convicted of a domestic violence situation, you are no longer allowed to carry a firearm for work purposes. So you are automatically forfeit your right to be in military service.
Hmm.
But
Which
are
brings
you?
us back to, yes, you're pretty much immediately set up to be administratively separated from the military if you get convicted.
What were you
So
asking, Laura?
the Lautenberg Amendment, just this, I'm learning about this right now. You said that you are no longer allowed to serve in the military, correct?
Yes,
But you can
because to
still
serve in the
own a gun.
military, well, no, you're not eligible to own a firearm anymore. But of course, you can get around that by transferring the guns to your wife or whatever. Or the old lie, oh, I lost it on when my boat flipped over. All of my firearms were on my Bass Pro Shop boat, and it flipped over, and they're all lost in the bottom of the lake. Uh,
Hmm. I guess there's. I mean, I guess for every law
but
there is
that
a
leads
workaround. But
us
just like you're saying,
that
just like
leads
you
us
said
back
earlier, at least
to
it's an attempt. Like, I mean,
the
we post
fact
speed
that
limits.
uh, law enforcement officers, the law enforcement community has a much higher than the overall population of domestic assault incidences.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you can see why they don't want these numbers being investigated. Because I mean, what are you going to do if half of your police force can no longer carry a firearm, and you have to fire them and basically replace half of your police force?
Right.
Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers.
Right.
That's what I would do.
Uh,
I mean, I just don't feel. I'm in agreement with the. I mean, we have this amendment for a reason. I don't feel like it should just be utilized against the population at large as a way to basically extract guns from the populace. I mean, I would think the people who are over us and actually have a greater, or who oversee us, they aren't over us, but who oversee us, who are supposed to protect us. I want to know that this guy isn't hot under the collar and ready to pop off at the first sign of insecurity, um,
Right.
because he's not stable, and it's been proven in how he or she conducts themselves in their home life. So that's, I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm for it. I can't see why we wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, I mean, I can see why they wouldn't want us to do it. So that this is the first time I've really heard about the Lautenberg Amendment and how it doesn't affect law enforcement.
And that's, in order for it to affect them, they would have to be held accountable by their peers. I mean, you get called out to your partner, the guy that's always working with you, to his house one night because someone's called in a potential domestic assault situation. What are you going to do? Are you going to step across that thin blue line?
Right.
That happens quite a bit, where stuff gets swept under the rug. So quote unquote, one bad decision doesn't ruin a career.
Right.
We see this where white college rapists are getting slaps on the hands because shouldn't let one bad decision ruin their whole life.
Yeah. Which, to remark on that, Brock Turner, the infamous college rapist, is living at home with his parents and has an entry level job right now. So
Wow.
he did not continue his college swimming career.
Yeah.
Actually, just
I
read
mean,
that the other day.
Well, we take them down. I mean, and we've taken them down and removed them from society. But I mean, just like Lee is acknowledging, like I mean, basically, if you found a recent, even if they were illegal, immigrant, who had been busted raping somebody behind a dumpster, who was drunk, then yeah, there would be screams for deportation, for execution, and everything. But yeah, Brock goes home and he's just Netflixing and chilling, in mom and dad's basement.
Right. And I'm not sure that Brock Turner is an incel, but I think incels in this country are in the undercurrent, and I think they are slowly coming to the surface, and we're
Yeah.
starting to see some of that. Um, I, I'm almost positive the Dayton, Ohio shooter was an incel. I mean, he had a hit list and a rape list, and
Yeah.
clearly was angered against women. But I think that the term incel hasn't necessarily caught on as well, is because people really don't know what it means. And I mean, it is a portmanteau because it stands for involuntarily celibate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically these group of guys who hate society because they are incapable of getting a sexual partner. And
Yeah.
a lot of people think that, well, it's just women that they're mad at. They're just, they're mad at women. And the majority of them are out to get women, but it's getting to the point where they also are mad at men who are able to get women.
Exactly.
So then they form this overall hatred, and then they just set out to go shoot up a bar on a Saturday night.
Yeah, and I think, and you've kind of hit the nail on the head in regard to one of the causes, which I think also dovetails perfectly into the prior discussion we were having about race. They're involuntarily celibate, because they can't get a date. They don't have any outlet, and they have all this teenage, or not even just teenage, because we got grown men who are doing it too, but but there's this sense of entitlement that exists for these individuals that has them so angry, where they've come into sexual maturity, and now women should be throwing their underwear at them, and hitting up their Instagram and Facebook with pictures of themselves nude or whatever. I don't know what they think should be happening, but it's not happening how they want it to happen, or as easy as they want it to happen. And I think the reason why is because they have not taken the time to understand how to communicate effectively. Whenever you have a mentality that you are owed, that you have no desire, that you have no need or no requirement to learn anything about anybody else but yourself, your culture, your desires, your feelings. You have this this mindset that you can project a reality onto the world, as opposed to react and interact with it in a healthy fashion. And then you get that reality check when you go to the first club and nobody's throwing their underwear at you because you're supposed to be the bee's knees or whatever. Then yeah, that triggers a meltdown. Like I'm rich and white, and society says I should have access to anybody I want to, sober, drunk, whatever. I can do whatever I want to do. But then reality says, no, you can't. That's going to trigger a certain kind of outrage. So I think entitlement is a big issue in regard to incel violence.
Yeah, it's never their fault. It's not something that they're doing. According to them, it's not something that they're doing wrong as to why they're not getting these intimate sexual partners. It's always the other person's fault. It's always women's fault.
And I believe that is intentional and calculated. I believe that is one of the tools that they're using to recruit these young men, just like your traditional, Middle Eastern terrorist cells. They're finding these
the virgins, the 40 virgins.
Yep. It's not your fault. It's third wave feminism. It's these empowered women who want not equality, but more power than men, and they're finding these, and they call themselves red pillars. They've taken the red pill. They've seen behind the curtain of projected reality to the truth. and they're able to be radicalized by these groups on these chat boards.
Right.
And it's kind of like, you know, the Price is Right, the Plinko game. They're making their way down this board, and you know, eventually one hits the jackpot and goes on a shooting spree.
And that correlation between I mean, because I mean we talk often like, you know, being an incel is, you know, a uniquely American issue, but you know, it was that was a very poignant observation that, you know, yeah, it's the same, you know, mentality that they use to recruit young jihadists overseas. You know, it's basically, you know, you may not have women here, but in the afterlife, you know, there's 40 virgins, you know, waiting for you, you know, to do with whatever you want to do. And so, yeah, you know, that's going to motivate you to strap a bomb to yourself and let, you know, all these other individuals who have that kind of access to, you know, sexual partners and whatnot, you know, let them have it so you can go get yours. So yeah, that's I never really thought of it that way, but yeah, I made you know, that meme in regard to, you know, comparing, you know, American, you know, terrorism to you know, foreign terrorism, but I really was just thinking about the violence that they were willing to, you know, perpetrate, you know, on, you know, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Just, you know, the image of her and joking about raping her and joking about assaulting her. That's a very I mean, that's a terrorist, you know, activity. You know, if a normal person goes around talking about I'm going to rape people, you know, we would say there's something wrong with you. But you know, Moscow Mitch is like, come work on my campaign. Like, what the fuck?
Boys will be boys.
Exactly, boys will be boys, and we excuse it, we rationalize it, and
it's just locker room talk.
Exactly. You know, that's the same old grab him by the pussy. So when it comes down to it, you know, that is a radicalization, in my opinion. Whenever you have these individuals who are exhibiting unhealthy, antisocial behavior, and then they turn around and instead of being admonished for it and chastised for it or punished for it in any way, you know, the adults in the room step up and they're like, good job, Tyler. Way to let those women know exactly how you should be. And so that's radicalization happening in real time, right in our faces. Like, we were literally watching people say, it's okay. If you said, yo, it's okay for you to go out and kick babies, and people went out and started kicking babies, you would go after that person who was preaching about kicking babies and say, yo, there's something fucking wrong with you and you need to stop because you're encouraging some unhealthy shit. That's stochastic terrorism right there. And that's what's going on in regard to a lot of the young men, you know, in our society. And yeah, like you were saying, you know, Lee, there is this red pill undercurrent that is feeding individuals into you know, this politically terrorist culture that seems to have permeated the Republican Party, where, you know, you got the Proud Boys, you got, you know, incels, you know, being radicalized to push back against feminism, against, you know, different gender, you know, identification labels. You know, I mean, you got this demeaning of you know, of individuals who don't subscribe to traditional roles, you know, that men and women are supposed to have. Women aren't supposed to be wearing pants. Women aren't supposed to, you know, dress like this or talk like that. Men are supposed to act like this. And, you know, male sexuality, you know, is suffering because of, you know, liberals, you know, who are ambiguously gay or whatever label they want to assign. And so basically we're in a situation where, you know, young people are being brought in because they feel that lack of belonging that's imposed upon them because of our historical connection with gender, our historical connection with race, and that's rooted in, you know, this hyper conservatism that's turning into, you know, fascism, in all honesty.
I agree, 100%.
Well, I think that going forward, we already have the playbook here. We've been fighting international terrorist organizations for a long time. If someone commits a terrorist act and they're suspected of being, part of one of these groups, their life is torn apart. Every stitch, nothing left unturned. Their digital life footprint is torn apart.
Mm-hmm.
Where their finances are coming from. Every possible link is investigated. Accounts are frozen. Co-conspirators or co-members are identified. And a lot of it's done through monitoring message boards.
Mm-hmm.
The NSA, I guarantee you, has an idea of who these fools are and are just waiting for the order to set their dogs loose. And if the KKK and every associated member had all of their bank accounts frozen overnight, guarantee you there would be a very large dent done in their capability to move forward.
Exactly.
We do that to Al Qaeda, all these international terrorist organizations. Why can't we do it to domestic terrorists?
I agree. There's a push. We saw in regard to 8chan, the internet provider for them, Cloudflare, which basically protects their domain from like hacker attacks. Is basically when you have apparently a large volume of users for your particular website, you need to contract security for that out to a provider that can handle that kind of traffic, the repeated attacks that come from outside entities and individuals. And so Cloudflare was basically the server that was hosting the 8chan message boards that helped to radicalize the El Paso terrorists. I don't know if the Dayton one was on there, but I know the El Paso one was on there. And so basically, they said that they were no longer going to carry or provide services for 8chan. And that took them down temporarily. But we see that these sites also, they pop up in different places with different providers that are willing to in the name of quote unquote free speech cover these individuals or give them cover so they can continue their shit. But you're very, very right. Like there's no reason why we can't document what the heck is going on. There's no reason why we can't build profiles for these individuals. And somebody was, I got into an argument the other day where an individual was saying like, well, if we build profiles or whatever, what's going to stop individuals or stop our government from using that data against us in some shape, form, or fashion. First of all, you're assuming that those profiles aren't already built. You're assuming that that data is not already being tracked by somebody. We have one of the largest surveillance states in the world. And so, between, and you also got individuals, telling on themselves every day, posting their guns online, going and visiting these message boards, leaving digital footprints. So it's not like, it's an issue of security for these individuals in regard to their personal information. Most of them don't care because they know nothing's going to be done. And they know that nothing can be done until they've already done something. So, what we're doing right now, it just isn't working. And we got to do something.
Since September 11th, 2001, the NSA has been, and probably before then, but definitely afterwards with the Patriot Act, they've been using their supercomputing capacity to monitor every digital communication on the planet.
They got backdoors on Facebook.
They're looking for, and that includes live phone calls because everything is digital now. It includes not only possible terrorist keywords, but they're looking for economic triggers. I mean, they literally have their finger on the pulse of the globe. They're say that there's nothing that can be done is, so far from the truth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like your house is on fire and you're standing there holding a hose attached to the fire hydrant with the valve key in your hand.
I sure wish there was something
There's
we could
nothing
do
that can be done. If only there was something that we could do. I mean, we have the tools. We just have to use them. Yes, there is a risk that with a national federal gun owner database that information could be used against us. But that's kind of why we have the Second Amendment in the first place.
Yeah.
If we see states sending out police to try and round up gun owners, it's our founding fathers literally went and fought a war over removing bad governments and starting a new one. They gave us the playbook. If this government turns sour, when your food turns bad, you throw it out, you get more food. If we have to start from scratch, so be it. That's what America's all about.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we're at the 8:00 mark. I want to thank both of you all for coming and joining tonight, and then thank John in his absence, for being here. But we'll continue, this discussion, our discussion next week and everything, and we're coming along.